And so I was rapping, and I started taking him to the ciphers. Ciphers is when young MCs, rappers that is, would form a circle, and then someone would beatbox, and we would rap, freestyle, and all of that. At that time, I had not even begun writing my rap music. I would just freestyle. So I would take him to these freestyle ciphers, and he wanted to start rapping as well. And so I called him Zooks, and we started doing a lot of things together. We started rapping together. We started Zeus, yeah, Zeus, yeah. Zeus, by the way, that's the connection between him and the junior mayor's seat, and then him being the king of the gods, the way that he would sit on that junior mayor chair, yeah, I would think that he's ruling the universe. and by the way, it's important to the background we're going to talk about here. And but we'd be out of the chambers, and then he would be this playful guy. I'm like, okay, this dude, he knows how to play around, in his personality. Yeah.
Whenever you're amongst people,
yeah,
you don't see anyone that you're looking at that you feel like I'm better than that person.
Yeah.
That's a principle that's ingrained in Christianity.
Yeah.
Hip hop, polar opposite.
Yeah.
Ingrained in hip hop is this idea that when I'm around, I fade everyone. It's kind of like it's ingrained in hip hop. So that's just a small example to say. Kanye West is a typical example of that. There's this interview of his, which I think personifies. People look at it and they laugh, but he may boldly say it, but he's speaking outwardly the mindset of like the entire school of thought of hip hop. Only this interview of his where he says, he's like, people are asking me, who do I think I am? I already told you who I think I am, a God. And that is effectively the mindset.
All right. Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us for yet another testimony of how God has worked in our lives and how He has used us since we made a decision to come to Christ. My name is Simdumise Poswa. I am a pastor in the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the Cape Conference. And I'm here with my friend who will introduce himself. Please tell our audience who you are.
Yes. Hi to everyone who is watching this. I am Zukisani Zamela, Seventh-day Adventist. I've been one since, I think, 2007. And currently at Loiso Church. That's where I go to church on a regular basis, and where my membership is in the church. So yes, that's me.
That's good, that's good. Zooks and I have actually been friends for for a long time. I think we met in 2003.
Yes.
Yes, I was doing my matric in high school. We met at the junior council in Mthatha.
It's 21 years ago.
KSD municipality. He was the junior mayor there, and I just came as a junior councillor. And so we had similar interests, and what kind of things did we do there?
What did we do? So just for context, the junior council is kind of like, if you can think of it as a mini parliament, for the lack of a better word, whereby students from different schools are taken, they are brought together to form this council, which then which consists of a mayor, a speaker, and then ministers. We call the Minister of Sports, Minister of Arts and Culture, Minister of Education, etc. And then they are supposed to then come up with programs for the youths, the students, the young people of the area that falls under their jurisdiction. So just for context, the junior council is basically, for the lack of a better word, like a mini parliament. So what will happen is that for that jurisdiction for which that junior council services, students from various schools, maybe one or two representatives will be chosen from the various schools and youth clubs in that area. And then they come together to then form this council, which consists of a mayor, speaker, and ministers. So they have Minister of Sports, Minister of Education, Arts and Culture, etc. And then what they're supposed to do is that they're supposed to come up with programs that will then service the students. So for example, the Minister of Education will think of, okay, what way can we come up with a program that will better assist the students to to take education more seriously. Then they'll think up a project, and then they will then execute on that project. So effectively, that's what the Junior Council is about, and that's the context in which we met. I was, as he mentioned, I was at the time he came, I had not so long ago had been elected as the mayor, and I was a junior council as a representative from my school, in the same way that he also was the representative that was sent from his school, basically. That's the context in which we met.
I remember one of the projects that we did, it was for June 16. And I ended up writing a play for that, that we acted in the junior council for the city. And we also sometimes would host different kinds of shows, beauty pageants. We used to host open mic sessions when young people who had music talents, some who were dancers. I was a rapper, so we would have that. So we did different things that would keep young people off the streets, and then would also in those programs also speak more about the importance of education and how education can help us to break from the chains of poverty and various things. And as people who did well from our schools, it gave us a platform to share some of the things that we were doing that were helping us to succeed academically in school and also in other leadership areas.
I forgot about that play completely.
My clan name is Ndlovu. So I have that kind of memory. So those things don't slip my mind. So anyways, the interesting thing is that in the context of what we're talking about, while we were there, I had a high respect for Zooks because I saw you as this young person who was, a leader. The way that he would sit on that junior mayor chair, I would think that he's ruling the universe. and by the way, it's important to the background we're going to talk about here. And but would be out of the chambers, and then he would be this playful guy. I'm like, okay, this dude, he knows how to play around, in his personality. And so I was rapping, and I started taking him to the ciphers. Ciphers is when young, MCs, rappers, that is, would form a circle, and then someone would beatbox, and we would rap, freestyle, and all of that. At that time, I had not even begun writing my rap music. I would just freestyle. So we'd take him to these freestyle ciphers, and he wanted to start rapping as well. And so I called him Zooks, and we started doing a lot of things together. We started rapping together. Zeus, by the way, that's the connection between him and the junior mayor's seat, and then him being the king of the gods, and all of those things. So how was that for you?
You mean like the rapping
that
thing?
whole experience? Yes.
So I think it was again just to bring context. I didn't know rap that much for one. So I just I think Eminem really was the only rapper that I knew. And then you were coming with this underground hip hop, the deep rap, and so it was an intriguing thing. And this is something to note, by the way, that when young people do not have things that are really solid, they will find whatever thing that seems to fill them with meaning. And I think hip hop, more especially the deep variation of it, it kind of like it that's what made me to be drawn to it. The sense that exactly. It's not just you're someone like Eminem, for example. The commercialized is like swearing and women are these and whatever the case may be. But then you come across this idea of there's a deeper variation to it. So I was drawn into that. And also I must say that you spoke about how you looked up to me. I looked up to you for a number of reasons. One, you're like a year younger than me. But then you were like a year ahead of me in terms of academics, for one. And number two, you spoke about writing the play. You wrote poetry as well, by the way, which for some time I got into writing poetry because of you. I mean, I was a stand to you a little bit now that I think of it. I started writing poetry a bit because I was like, it's nice. It ties in with like the hip hop thing. And so it was just it was a really wonderful experience in the sense that it's nice to come across a young person. And I must say, I always say this when I speak about you, like when I speak about to people that even back then, whatever you would do, you would do it with seriousness. In other words, you're like, okay, this thing to me is a serious thing.
Yeah.
So it's always nice to come across, especially as a young person, to come across other young people who do not seem to take life as just this directionless thing.
Yeah.
To try to find, like, how can I put this? Life is to recognize life as a serious thing, and whatever it is that you're trying to do, you do to the best of your ability. Yes.
And also living for a purpose.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So,
You know,
yeah, it was all in all, it was a very, I'd say, it's a very wonderful period.
Yeah, it was an exciting time because for me, I had always listened to rap music, the Dr. Dre's and Snoop Dogg's and all of those. But one thing that, like you were saying, I had lost both my parents, 1999, 2001, and then I needed to find an avenue to express myself and to keep myself sane in that time. And when
because it was fairly recent.
Yeah,
we met 2003. It wasn't.
It was like 2 years after my father had passed away. So at that time, I found an avenue to express myself, where the expression of the confusion that I had as a young person without parents all of a sudden, and all the things that were happening in my life, so that rage is not expressed in ways that are destructive, but I could find a way to express my emotions and what I was going through, and to talk about the environment and where I was finding myself, but in a way that was upbuilding for other people and not destructive. So it was more therapeutic to me when during that time. And I remember when we met, I was staying with my brothers. You were staying alone because your hometown is in Barawa.
Yeah, I wasn't staying alone. I was staying with my aunt.
Yeah, with your aunt. Yes, I remember.
But I was away from home, but staying with my aunt. Yes.
Yeah. So we met under that context with Zooks. And he was Zeus, I was Sim D.
Sim the Divine.
Yeah, Sim the Divine. Sim the Divine. And by the way, someone might be asking themselves, what's up with these with these God-like names that we had. Look, without even noticing it, I was exposed to the Nation of Gods and Earths and their philosophies. The Nation of Gods and Earths is also called the 5% Nation of Gods and Earths, or 5%ers for short. It's a movement that grew out of New York. I think they broke away from the Nation of Islam that Malcolm X had been part of. And so a lot of hip hop artists, a lot of them, especially of the kind of hip hop that I was influenced by, and the people that formed the philosophical side of hip hop, people like the Rakims, like the Brand Nubians, and all of these artists, to the Busta Rhymes, to the Mos Defs and the Talib Kwalis and the Commons. At some point in time, they were involved in the Nation of Islam because it's very influential in the black consciousness space of America. So politically, you'll find that. I was influenced by the Black Panther movement and whatever in that part of the earth, and also, of course, the Steve Bikos and the Robert Sobukwes in South Africa and all of that. And then from a spiritual standpoint, without me knowing, I was also influenced by the NGE and all of that.
The theology.
The theological or spiritual foundation of hip hop.
That influence.
Yes. So now I was hanging out with guys in East London from a crew, I think it was called Kara Brotherhood, aka Black Storm. And these guys, they had all these god-like names, I remember there was a guy called Thoth, the god from the north. And a friend of mine, Triple M, was aka Osiris. And then I became Sim D, aka Sinai. And this is the funny thing. So Sim D was Sim the Divine, like you were saying, but of course it was also short for Simdumise. And the Sinai was that when I read the story in the Bible about God and how he gave the law at Sinai. It was thundering and lightning, and the people were so scared. They were running away, and so I saw myself as speaking with such authority that when I get on the mic, you will godly. Yeah, at the same time you'll feel my godly authority, but at the same time I'm giving words that that are life to people. So that was the thinking behind it. Yeah. By the way, this background is important. It's not an advertisement for hip hop in any way.
Yes.
But it is to say that, God is always seeking for us. And because Satan sees that, sometimes he runs ahead and introduces us to counterfeits of the real thing.
Yeah.
Because that's how I analyzed it later on.
Yeah.
I don't know how you felt about it as you reflected, but I felt like, Satan gave me the counterfeit as something, to think that my spiritual needs are being fulfilled, while really I was still in the world, still without Christ, and still without eternal life. I don't know how you you process that.
Exactly. It's always, I think this is sometimes where something that how can I put it? People will be told that there's a deception that's coming, right? But they always are 100% certain that I'll see it coming. Which that's not how the devil operates effectively. So even when it comes to hip hop, if I can put it that way, and more especially the underground, sort of like, because in as much as people may think, which I suppose was the case for me, you may think that you come, for example, in my case, I come from a Christian background, right? My father was Catholic, my mother was Pentecostal, so I was Catholic for some time, and then I became Pentecostal for a period. So I identified as a Christian, but then, as you are saying, because of starting to engage with hip hop, and I think that I'm just merely engaging with hip hop, but the reality is that the more you delve into it, whether you know it or not, the principles that they are packaged. It's very difficult to sort of separate it. I wouldn't go as far as saying that it's completely impossible. I wouldn't necessarily say that, but I'm just saying that it's very difficult to do that separation, more especially when you are not even aware of the connection that is effectively there. So that is definitely the case in my side. Just to make like a case in point, from a perspective of Christianity, Christianity puts one of the tenets, if I can put it that way, or principles, deep engraved principles of Christianity is humility, and not thinking too much of yourself. And seeking to be lowly, and not cowardly, but to be proficient and good in what you do, but be lowly. Whenever you're amongst people, you don't see anyone that you're looking at that you feel like I'm better than that person. That's a principle that's ingrained in Christianity. Hip hop, polar opposite. Ingrained in hip hop is this idea that when I'm around, I fade everyone. It's kind of like it's ingrained in hip hop. So that's just a small example to say that without you realizing, because of the fact that you haven't really analyzed that much, maybe you don't understand like this faith that you just subscribing to without fully understanding it, and also not fully understanding hip hop itself. You end up, holding two worlds that they may have a bit of an overlap, but there's a significant, at the core, there's a significant clash, sort of like mutually exclusive principles.
That's true. I mean, it makes me think of that verse that says, do nothing in strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. Then it says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, took upon him the form of a servant, and came in the likeness of men, and being found in fashion as a man, he became obedient even unto death, even the death of the cross. Now, interestingly enough, and I wanted to say this whole thing about Christ and his condescension from his equality with God to him choosing to become a man. Because here we were mere men, and we were given ourselves these, divine and godly attributes. And so it's almost
it's
self-exaltation.
Not even. Sorry for
Yes, no
cutting you,
problem.
but not even indirectly.
Yeah.
It's like
direct.
directly, basically uplifting
you.
yourself. That like I am a god. Hence,
Yeah.
Kanye West is a
Yes.
typical example
Easy.
of that. Like, there's this interview of his, which I think personifies. People look at it and they
Yeah.
laugh, but he may boldly say it,
Yeah.
but he's speaking outwardly the mindset of
Yeah.
like the entire school of thought of hip hop.
Yeah.
Mainly, this interview of his where he says, he's like, people are asking me, who do I think I am? I already told you who I think I am. A God.
Yeah.
And that is effectively the mindset.
I remember there was someone who was talking to me about, maybe Christianizing hip hop and bringing it into church and whatever. And they were making an example of Kanye West, because Kanye West had this period where he was doing, this Sunday
thing.
movement thing of his that he was doing. And at the same time, he was I think he was on Joe Rogan's show speaking about his love for expository sermons, and all of these things. And the same Kanye West was saying that in interviews. He's calling himself Jesus. And that's why, by the way, he's no longer Kanye now. He's Ye or Yeezy. That's where the Yeezy comes from. It's the fact that he's Jesus. And it's not exclusive to Kanye. You find Jay-Z, for example. People, would sing along H to the Izo, V to the Ize. But that is Hova. And when you put it with J, it's Jehovah. That's why in Takeover he said, God MC, me, Jehovah.
Yeah, exactly.
You go to Nas, he has a tattoo in his stomach, God's son. You might think that he feels like he's a child of God.
No.
Until you listen to his song, I think it was in the album God's Son, where he says, I carry the cross. If Virgin Mary had an abortion, I'd still be carried in the chariot by stampeding horses.
Still know
So you have all these, and then you go, whether it's Rakim, he calls himself Rakim Allah, meaning Rakim the God.
Yes.
He's addressed as the God. Guru. You go to all these artists, whether underground or the ones that are more known. Eminem released Rap God. People are thinking it's just a metaphor. But if you look at the roots of hip hop, you'll see that it's more than just a metaphor.
Yes.
And sometimes, of course, even if you're talking metaphorically, when you are a Christian, you need to also be careful that you don't border on blasphemy.
Yes.
In some of the things that you are learning. So here we were, young people, and at that time we were a positive influence to other young people, or at least we were trying to be. We were trying to be good with our academics, who were in positions of leadership. We were not drinking, not smoking. We're not doing any of those things. But here we were in a snare of Satan.
Yeah.
And we didn't know it. So I go to university at UNITRA, which is today known as Walter Sisulu University, the Nelson Mandela Drive campus, the one in Mthatha. So we kept in touch. But later on, you came to UCT, our paths passed.
Yes.
Parted.
So you were doing, when we met, you were doing matric. I was doing
Yes.
grade 11. So
Yeah.
then the following year, 2004,
Yes.
you go to UNITRA.
Yeah.
I do my matric.
Yeah.
And then the following year, you're still at UNITRA. Then I go to Cape Town. Well, I come.
You came here to Cape Town.
UCT.
So now, on my third year at university, I met a young lady. And so being a young man at university,
Of course.
I was like, this young lady looks pretty. And I need to put in a word for myself there. Interesting. Now, she was not in the regular circles where we were moving at university. She was not coming to bashes. She was not in the usual hangout spots. You see her, going from res either to spa to buy food, or you see her going from class and whatever. And I could see that this young lady was a church lady. So even at that time, by the way, I had enough sense to not approach a church lady the same way,
Of course.
that I would, a girl in the world. Because when a young lady carries herself with dignity, as a young man, you move in a different way, especially if you are a young man with some morals. Even if you may not be a Christian, and even if you are doing foolishness in the world, but you start changing the way that you move when you are around a godly young lady. So I respected this young lady. And so I was like, I need to find a way to approach her that will be respectable for where she is. Long story short, the day I decided to talk to her, we kicked it, very nicely, and we had very long conversations. But our conversations soon went to the issue of faith. So long story short, she asked me. I asked her, so are you a Seventh-day Adventist? Now, 2 of my lecturers were Seventh-day Adventists. One of them was my accounting 3 lecturer, Matthew Joikuti.
Okay.
He would be reading Ellen White books while he was invigilating us when we were taking exams.
Okay.
Actually, his first lecture, he spoke about New Start and the importance of taking care of our health if we want healthy minds and to do well in accounting. And then he dwelt on water. After that, 15 minutes of his first lecture, after that, almost every student in the class had a water bottle for the rest of the year.
Wow.
So I was like, who's this lecturer who starts telling us about our health? I was someone who was health conscious because of what happened.
What's his name again?
Matthew Joikuti. He's a lecturer at Walters University, the Barawath campus. Okay. He lectures in accounting. So his mentor, who was Professor Zeal, also was an Adventist. Right. And so he would come every once in a while, do week of prayer, and all of those things at the school. So I noticed the books in her shelf in her room. So I was like, oh, are you Seventh-day Adventist? Of course I knew, but it was part of making conversation. She said, yeah, I am Adventist and all of that. So then she asked me, so what about you? And then I said, no, actually,
well,
I actually don't go to church. I was very honest. I was like, no, I don't go to church. I do believe in God. I do believe in the Bible, but I don't go to church. She said, why? I said, first of all, I feel like Christians are hypocrites. And secondly, I don't feel at home when I'm in church. Then she asked me, so why? I said, okay, so if church would change and, she asked me why I don't feel at home in church. So I was like, look, I'm doing hip hop. So when I go to church and I hear the singing, it's like, bored. Yeah. I feel like I'm in a funeral, someone has died. Yeah.
Where the beat at? Where's the beat?
And so she was like, wow. So if church would, make music that is more lively, that is more appealing to you, would you come? I said, I probably wouldn't come if a church would actively try to attract me by making music similar to what I'm making. I said, because I understand the principles behind what I'm doing. And if I would see a church doing that just to win me,
red flag.
I'll be like, why do I need to be there if they are coming to me? So I wouldn't go. Then I told her, my friends, and I'm not going to talk about their church, but they went to a church that even allowed us to rap at church and would perform for young people. And we had groupies in the church, So I told them, I said, I can't come to your church. They said, why? I said, I have groupies in your church, and I was brought by your pastor to actually come and rap for them.
And therefore he facilitated getting those groupies.
Yeah, he facilitated it. So that doesn't make sense. So I said, that one would not work. I know that the reason why I don't feel at home at church, there's something probably wrong with me. My taste would probably have to change in music. And then I said, secondly, I feel like Christians are hypocrites because they will say one thing and they will live in a totally different way. And I'm not talking about someone making a mistake or whatever, but living a lifestyle that is contrary to what the Bible is teaching and what they are professing. And so she asked me a question. And it was a twofold question. She said, no, it was one question now after she had asked me those 2 questions. She said, by the way, her name was Tembi, this young lady. I don't want to, she said, you mentioned Matthew, why didn't you mention me? Her name was Tembi. Yeah. And so Tembi asked me, so if you know how a Christian is supposed to live, why is it that you don't become a Christian so that you can demonstrate by your life and your example, both to people who are not Christians and those who are Christians, how Christianity is supposed to be lived out in their lives. So I didn't have a good answer for that. Then I said, I never thought of it that way. I said, no, you should think about it. Then she said, my church is actually having, she hit me with a very strong canvas. When I was at that point, then she said, we're having a community care day this Sabbath, and I don't have anyone that I've invited to come. Can you please come and be my guest? Because it was said that we need to have a guest that we've invited. Yeah.
So you came trying to make her up, and she flipped that around.
She flipped it on me.
Hey.
And here's the funny thing, I had ulterior motives, even by, in my going. Yes, I was interested because of, the fact that the church was a Sabbath-keeping church. And that's what I had read in the Bible. So I was like, I'm interested in this church that's keeping what I believed was the biblical Sabbath, and I still believe that.
But at the end of the day, you still
I
were
was like, this will also
still
be
trying to
points.
impress.
Yeah, I will add to my points, I'm trying to impress here. So yeah, people can't imagine. I had dreadlocks at that time. You would hardly see me looking like this. I was wearing my baggy pants, my printed tees, and my either my tennis sneakers or my Timberlands. That's
Tims.
the Tims. Headbands and baseball caps. Flipped to the back. Natty dread, all of that kind of stuff. So anyways, that's how I came to church. And on that day, the guy was preaching a hard sermon. He was preaching on Daniel 7. And when he first explained, so he flipped now from Daniel 7, went to Revelation 13. Then he started explaining the issue of the beast, who the beast is, what is the mark of the beast, and what is 666. For the first time, that thing made sense to me. I was like, this is the first because I had been reading the book of Revelation and I was scared to my wits because
this beast.
The thing is that I don't know who the beast is. I don't know what the mark of the beast is. I don't know what 666 is. I'm scared of this thing, but I don't know how to avoid it. That was my dilemma.
Why?
Yeah, so when he explained it, it makes so much sense. And God seemed more reasonable now because this thing was clear. And I had gone to a Catholic church, and when he showed me, the connection between, the Antichrist and Catholicism, because I had been there in that system, I knew about the confessional. I knew about bowing down to Mary, a Mary statue. I knew about all of these pilgrimages that you had to take and all of these things. I knew about the entire system, not in depth, but I knew enough about it to make the connection. So I was like, I need to come back to this church. But the thing that touched me the most in this story is that in the afternoon, the lunch was vegetarian. And I wanted to eat more healthy because of what had happened to my parents and their health and them, passing away at a young age. So I was like, this is a good church for me because...
In fact, weren't you vegetarian even at some point in time?
I was vegetarian
before.
Before Christ.
Because I do remember at some point in Tata, because part of your thingy, while I was still MTAT, before you went to university, there was this period where I'd say you sort of had some Rastafarian influence to you. Yes. Yeah.
There was a time actually I had spent a year being vegan. That was before we even met when I was in East London. East London. That was in 2002 to be exact. And so when I came in Mthatha, I still had remnants of that. Okay. That influence was still there.
So now you come across this church.
Now I'm coming across a church that is preaching a health message, that is serving vegetarian food. I said, I like these guys. And then in the afternoon, the young people were going for hospital visitation. So Tembi was like, would you want to come along with us? Or
Amen. God blessed him.
The Lord used her in a mighty way. She was used in a mighty way. And here's the thing. I said, no, I want to have the whole experience. If you people stay the whole day at church, I want to participate in all the activities that you people participate in. And I'm telling you, the one of all those activities that was the greatest blessing to me was the hospital visit. To see young people who don't have someone over them, deciding themselves to go to a hospital, sing, tell people about God, encourage them. People who, some of them, their rural areas are so far, they don't have people visiting them. That thing it spoke to me. Now here's something that I had, I don't know about your experience, but when I was in the world, I would do a show and, we'd be the center of attention. Some shows would be opening act, do the stage warming for acts like Malaika. There was a time when Malaika was in Mthatha and Mafigizol. They were at what used to be, what was it? I think now it's something over. Kayamajola over. I forgot Richardson Park.
Okay.
Yeah, Richardson Park as you're going towards North Crest. When you're coming from town, the stadiums, that's this side. So they were performing there. And so we were opening act. Raw Fusion was among the opening acts. And there was Trompies. I remember there was a time when there was Trompies at Unitra. And we were also curtain raising for them and whatever. You know, so you have this euphoria that, yeah, I'm on top of the world.
Yeah.
But then I would go to my bed and I'd feel this emptiness.
Yeah.
I was like, but I was on top of the world, you know, all the girls, you know, my neck was on and all of these things, but I come to my room and I'm like empty. But then on that day, my heart was full. I got home, I made food, I ate, I went to sleep.
Amen.
I didn't even go to hang out with my friends. I was like, I don't want anything that will change this experience.
Yeah.
So to fast forward the story,
sorry, just to interject a bit, there's something that you said that you were flowing so nicely. I didn't want to cut you.
Yeah.
The thing about the question that Tembi asked you, and by the way, just to show it, like, you know, I think God meant for our lives to really be, because even with Utembi, I knew Utembi, I think probably before you,
me,
because I went to high school with her.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if she was a year before me.
Yeah, she was
I think she was
below
a year. Yes, she was like one grade below me.
Yeah.
So I knew her. So when you would later on narrate your story to me, I was like, oh yeah, no, I know her. But anyways, I say that in passing. The question that she asked. So the thing about the question that she asked, that if you claiming that you sing hypocrites in the church, and this is one of, if not the main reason why you don't go, why don't you then go and put it's? I think there is so much power in that, in saying that many of us, we like throwing stones from afar instead of actually being a part of the trenches, because it's very easy to criticize from outside instead of like get in and get your hands dirty.
Seeing a problem
it's very easy.
Too much intelligence.
Exactly. Because when you're inside, you kind of like begin to say, hey, I see some of the struggles that a person who is like within. So I think that's a powerful thing to always just think as a person about anything that you believe is important, but the people who are currently custodians of it are not doing it properly. Avail yourself to it. I think that's like the first thing. And it's so also another thing that I just wanted, the last thing I'll say before you continue, your thing about your lecturer, and the same applies to Utembi. It's so powerful and important for us to utilize whatever opportunity that we can to, share that which the context we're in allows us to share. Concerning the things that God has given us as a people. I think that is very, very powerful. But
the power of their influence was this. Both of them were not actively trying to win me.
Yeah, exactly.
They were not like, they had not gone door to door and found me at the door.
Yes.
And then they started talking to me. They had not handed me a pamphlet. It was in normal interactions.
Exactly.
Exactly. Tembi could have easily dismissed me because here I am, this guy with a natty dread, I mean, you didn't have to guess that I was a hip hop head. You could see it. But she didn't like, no, this guy, where is he coming from? He looks at me, he looks at him, he thinks something can happen. She was nice about it, And God used her in a mighty way. And the funny thing is this, when I spoke to her about 3 years later, I think this was 2009, about that conversation, she said she didn't remember it.
Wow.
That's the power. I was like, then it must have been God who was. He said, I don't even know, because she was like, I was having my own struggles at that time. So I'm asking myself, how did I get to a point where I was even able to say that?
Wow.
I was like, the thing is that God knew where your heart was, and God used you in spite of whatever shortcomings you may have thought you had at that time, and used you in a mighty way. So after that, I was in and out of church. I would come, sometimes I would have shows on Sabbath, then I would go to the shows. But then on my birthday, 2007, and now I'm in East London. And that's a long story, how God led me to East London.
Yes.
Because I was supposed to have gone to UKZN to do my CTA or my honors in accounting before I started my articles.
Okay.
But somehow, some way.
This is in your CA journey.
Yes, in my CA journey. And the guys I helped to apply because I was in the Commerce Student Society.
Okay.
I helped guys to apply. They were taken.
Hey.
I helped guys to apply for jobs. I had a friend who ended up, because we connected with Standard Bank, with FNB, with Sizwe Nsaluba, with Nkonki, these accounting companies, with SAB, that was BC, with Coca-Cola and stuff. And we connected people and they ended up finding jobs. I helped people to apply and all of those things. But here I was, and in a class of more than 300, I was the second student in terms of academically. So it's not like it was my academics were not allowing me to go where I was sending people. But somehow, some way, God allowed me to neglect my own self while I was helping others. And that led me to being in East London, which I believe was providential. And now, this is what happens in East London. My birthday comes, I make a decision.
And your birthday is beginning of the year?
Beginning of the year, February. So I make a decision. It's almost like a New Year's resolution, but a birthday resolution. From now on, I'm not going to perform on Sabbath. I'm going to do my best not to work on Sabbath. And I'm going to start taking this thing of God seriously. Because from that community guest day, there was a week of prayer. Towards the end of the week of prayer, I came for Vespers. And the brother was preaching Daniel 2. He was your enemy turned friend in high school. Brother Amen Jogweni was preaching, and he was preaching on Daniel 2, and he made an appeal. And when he made an appeal, I stood up. But then when they took us to the vestry to pray, all the ones who had stood up for the appeal. Then I asked myself, why did I do this? And Zux is my friend, he knows me. And the observation was true. That's my thinking, that when I'm doing something, I need to do it fully. I can't be half-hearted. And I was like, so I stood for this appeal. So what does this mean? So the Holy Spirit kept using it. I remember there was a time when...
So in other words, the fact that you stood for the appeal kept on ringing.
Yes, in my mind.
You stood.
I stood in public.
Up.
Yeah, I stood up in public and said, I'm giving my life to Christ.
Yeah.
So now, why am I living contrary to that? I remember I was about to write an exam in text.
To interject, I suppose that's a note for us preachers, that we should not be too negligent of making appeals.
Making appeals. Yeah. Appeals are very important, by the way. You don't know who is in the audience when you are making an appeal. That's true. And I stood up and we prayed, and as I remember, we called him Utafez. Utafez was praying, and as he was praying, I was like, this thing is serious. And these people are taking what we've just done seriously. So a few weeks after that, I was writing an exam for text, and I was preparing for my exam. And so I had this girl who was in my room, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to her, so that's why I should remain anonymous. And so I had this girl in my room, and we're fooling around. And remember, I'm in, I'm out. I'm not fully in. And somehow, some way, we had to end what we were doing, because of certain circumstances. And I went back to the library to study. I was taking a break at this time. I went back to the library to study. I could not. My conscience was hitting me. And I was confused. I was like, I've done this thing before, and I've gone all the way with it. Why now? And the Holy Spirit said, didn't you a few weeks ago stand up and say you are giving your life to Christ? I left my books in the library. I went to my room. I knelt beside my bed. I said, Father, please forgive me. I will not do this thing again. So it goes back to the point you were making, that we make appeals while we're preaching. Our work is done, but the Holy Spirit continues working on people. And that's what happened to me. So 2007, my birthday comes, I make this resolution. I'm not going to be in and out. I'm going fully, and I'm going to really go through this thing and learn more about Christ. So long story short, I went to church, found other young people who were serious about Christ, you know. That's where I met the Jokos, the Ndwanas, Ulendo, Manyano, and them, you know, the brethren, Musa, in church. And Ndwana was teaching the Sabbath school lesson. I was like, these are a bunch of young people and they have powerful comments. I'm young. What stops me from being able to do? So I always had a mentality, you know, if someone else can do it, if it's something good and something positive, someone else can do it, what stops me from doing it? So it's like, that means I can do this. And they started the Bible studies.
Yes.
Yeah, they started the Bible studies.
Which then brings me
me
closer to that.
Now, something happened to you in UCT.
Yes.
That brought you to East London.
Yes.
What was it?
So just to tie it up, so as we said, if you remember, you go to 2004, you go to Unitra.
Yes.
I'm doing my matric, still Mthatha.
Yeah.
2005, you are continuing at Unitra.
Yeah.
And then I go to UCT to study. And then, so 2005, I get to UCT, I become fascinated with the city life. I'm not stupid, right? I was like at top, I passed my matric with distinction, and so I wasn't a dumb person. Yeah. But I got to UCT, got distracted, and then of all the courses that I was doing, I was studying electrical and computer engineering, and of all the courses that I was doing, I failed all of them, except one, drawing. So I kept on saying to myself,
from distinctions
to drawing. I'm like, drawing, bro. I was saying, yo, dude, like, what?
By the way, no shade to artists. No.
But in the context of
context,
engineering, like computer science, electrical engineering, I failed all of those things. And then drawing is not the star of the program I was in. Yeah. So anyways, I get excluded academically. I appeal against it. Now I come a little bit from a troubled background in the sense that I had an abusive father and blah, blah, blah. Though that wasn't really the case, the reason why I failed. But hey, it's a victimhood card. I'm not advocating people to do that, but that's what happened. So I'm like speaking with my mother. What can we say? We're like, now we're going to use this. Hey, look, I had these troubles and blah, 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 blah. They take me back. I come back 2006. I improve, right? I really do improve, but then I struggle a bit with maths and physics some more. In part because I'm not paying as much attention as I should had. I think more especially computer science, because I really started getting into computer science. I remember both of my first and second semester computer science, I had like 70 plus passes in both of them. But I ended up neglecting these two subjects. I passed the electrical engineering, out of that. So now, the first year when I failed, I knew an exclusion was coming because I was like, I know. Some subjects I didn't even write because I got DPRs. They were like, you can't even write exams because you don't qualify even for an exam. So I knew the first one. So when I got a letter saying you've been excluded, I was like, okay, so what's next? I had already investigated how you appeal and all of that. The second time in 2006, I did not see that coming because I was like, no, I've definitely improved. Get a letter. Unfortunately, bro, I'm like, Haibo, how did this happen? Try to make calls and find out. They're like, no, the problem is that we are not judging you purely as a first year student. We are judging you as a person who is doing first year for the second time. So your cumulative credits are supposed to be X amount and they're not. I'm like, no one told me this. But then tried to appeal again. They were like, no. So I'm crushed now. And just to add further context, you know, God works in mysterious ways. He has ways of humbling us when we need to be humbled, because at this point in time, the 2005, that was my first year. Towards the end of the year, I applied to be part of the house committee in the residence that I lived in. That was a big thing, you know, for us back then. I got into the house committee. I think I was in the food, I was responsible for food or something like that. I don't remember. So then so I get excluded, but then I get back, so I come and I serve. Towards the end of that time, I applied to become a member of the house com again, but now I'm applying to be the head student, basically, to be like the head of the household. And then long story short, I get in. So getting into 2007,
Yeah.
I was supposed to be like at top of my thing.
Yeah.
I'm like in one of these reses that are like respect. Well, Leo Marquardt is kind of like, reputation here is weird because it's this res that it has a ghetto feel to it, but from a perspective of like masculinity, toxic, what they would call, I don't like saying this because people use it as a cliche, but if you're thinking of like toxic masculinity, you're thinking of Leo Marquardt. So I'm in top of this sort of like highly male energetic res, and I'm like on top of it, and I'm going to have like the best room in this res and all of that. So then I get excluded.
You were ghetto fabulous.
Yeah, I was ghetto fabulous. Then I get excluded.
Yeah.
So I tried to appeal, they're like, no. And I'm like, yo. The rumors are going to spread so quickly. He was head student and then he got excluded. You know, the thing about Inchaba. My enemy. What are my enemies going to say? So this is how I'm thinking. So I'm like, okay, anyways, this has happened. What do I do next? I go to a student advisor. The student advisor says, look, you are not going to be able to come in. The only thing you can do is that you've passed everything concerning first year, but then this maths and physics has chowed you. So what you can do is that I can give you, he pulls up this book of his. He's like, these two courses, here are the equivalent courses that you can take at UNISA that will then cover you these courses. If you do that, and then you apply back and you do well, you pass, then we will consider you. And in my mind, I'm thinking, UNISA, from UCT to UNISA, because I'm still full of myself, right? UCT to UNISA, and just 2 courses. It's a wasted year. The entire year, I'm just doing. But anyways, I'm like, it's the only class that I have to play. So obviously, there's no one I know at Cape Town. I'm not going to be in res anymore. So then I was going to go back to the Eastern Cape because UNISA, you're corresponding. You don't need to be on campus. Then my mother, fortunately, was kind enough to have enough emotional intelligence to think that, look, if he comes and stays here, at home is Butterworth, by the way, that's where I'm from. If he comes and stays at Butterworth, it's going to take a hit on him because now he's here and the neighbors are going to be wondering, Aibo, you sitting now, what are you doing back here? So she was like, go to East London, go to East London, and then I have a cousin who is at East London, Sisbume. So I go and I stay with Sisbume, East London, while I'm corresponding with while I'm corresponding with UNISA. So I applied UNISA, they accept me, so I start like my correspondence. So then I think it was like just a few months in, I don't know if it was probably like April, May, sometime then, walking in the streets, then all of a sudden, lo and behold, who's this Sim? Is that Sim? Hey, what's up, man? So that's how we reconnect. That's how we reconnect, and that's when our stories remerge again. So I'm meeting Sim, and
now, before you continue with that, I just wanted to say something about, you know, I just wanted to say to our listening audience that it's important to note how the spiritual element in the education of young people is so important. Here was Zooks, he was brilliant, he was a student leader in high school, he was in the junior council of Umtata, he passed with a distinction, he was accepted at UCT, he did well. But because the spiritual element was lacking, and with it the emotional intelligence that can come with spirituality when it is done right, you were not able to cope with university. And someone who would have looked at your grades would have thought something about your intellectual abilities, which was not related at all with your intellectual abilities. It just had more to do with your emotional intelligence that was affected by the fact that you didn't have a strong backbone spiritually, and therefore the city life swept you under your feet. So I want to say to parents, as much as you, and even to young people, as much as you want to invest in your academics and all of that, don't neglect your spirituality, because that can come about to catch up with you. And but here's something I think is positive from this story, as we are going to see, is that even though you made serious flops, God still in his providence took that and used it to his glory. And I think that's also something that we can come out with. Sometimes you might think that you've backed yourself into a corner, you know it's your fault, but always trust that God will providentially even use that, such that even when you are the one who has messed up, all things work together for good for those who love the Lord, can also be true for you, even if the bad that you are going through is your own doing.
Yes.
I just wanted to share that.
And by the way, you may still bear the scars, by the way. Just to make sure we are clear that it doesn't mean that all the scars will necessarily disappear, but it's just that to say that God can utilize even those scars when you then surrender them to Him for His glory.
For His glory.
And so I'm walking in the streets, and then I'm like, I see Sim. I'm like, hey, Sim, what's up? He doesn't have dreads anymore for some reason. It's the first thing that I noticed. They were, okay, like Inwele, like they're like, I think they were like this.
Yeah, they're like this.
Pretty much. So I meet up with the Sim, and we're like, hey, man, I'm so happy. We're catching up a bit. And so we're chatting, and I think I asked about ciphers. Where are the ciphers here? So again, just to remind the audience that ciphers are like a gathering of rappers, basically, for simplicity's sake.
The cipher is like, the word cipher, it's by the way, it's also a word that is used for the number 0 by the nation of gods and earths. 0 is called a cipher because they call it supreme mathematics. Each number has a certain significance in the nation of gods and earths. So 0 is a cipher.
I see.
And so when you are standing in a cipher, you are forming a circle. You are forming the number 0. And that's where, we do the beatboxing and the freestyling, and the battle raps happen, and all. So that's where the word cipher comes from. Yeah.
So I cut. Sorry, go touch it in the So I asked Sim, where are the ciphers? Like where are the ciphers at? So anyways, and then I think you answer saying, I've put that on hold a bit.
Yeah.
Mind-blowing form. Now I'm wondering, and then, like, what happened? Like, because it was a significant part of like your life, more so than Imna.
Yeah.
Because Imna, it was I'd say
it was more casual.
It was more casual, more like of a hobby, and more than it was for you. Because when you were thinking,
to me, I was a hip hop.
Yes.
I remember there was a song that was done. Yeah, good mixtape here to Zero Fusion. One of my friends.
You hear mixtape? You even
we were doing mixtape
records.
That's mixtape here to has been actually when I decided to actually pull back. Actually, Nama, I was working on my own mixtape. I was on song number 12.
Wow.
On my mixtape, I was just going to do freestyles, and I was ready to record when I made the decision to just, And my friend Ev in this song. Was talking about just hip hop Mtata, and he said Sim Diesel in the Hizzle, of course, came with more passion. So that's how I was much into hip hop.
Yeah,
so that's where
exactly
the mind blow was for
exactly.
For
so I'm like, okay, and so you say you've put it on hold a bit, but I think you also mentioned in Doba you are more you started getting into church.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm like, really? Like church as in a Christian? Like, I've become a Christian. So that excites me, because again, last I had interacted with him, he was anything but Christian. Like Egyptian mythology stuff, Rastafarianism influence, and so so when you were like Christianity, to me, the moment you said that, I took it as a sort of like just to maybe paint a background in like a minute or less. As I said, I come from a Christian background, right? Heavily Christian. In fact, at some point in time, I had been baptized. Actually, I don't actually remember the year it was that I was baptized in my mother's church.
By the way, Mama Zooks, that lady prays. Yeah, she's a very spiritual lady. Zooks' mom is a very spiritual lady.
A lot, exactly. So I had been baptized in her church, right? Like proper baptism, not even Catholic.
Sprinkling or whatever.
No sprinkling or anything like that. So, but my journey, there was something that was missing, right? I always felt like the gospel, that sort of like, there was a disconnect between God's law being binding on us and at the same time not binding. So it's like, okay,
grace.
when I'm doing the freedom of grace, when I'm doing things, I can do izinto, but still be acceptable in God and Yezuluin, and that never made sense to me. I'm like, this thing, it doesn't make sense. So it's like,
that's why I felt the hypocrisy was.
Yes.
I was like, this thing of so much grace that
you can do whatever
and just have a profession.
Exactly.
For me, that profession was worth nothing.
Exactly. So that is what. So even when like I'm like, I would like, okay, I'll do whatever I want to do, but then I'm like, oh, I have the grace ticket sort of like thing. But I was like, no man. So I had that struggle. So when then you told me that you were a Christian, I took it as like, okay, maybe this is another chance for me to kind of like, give it another try and try to rebuild and see where it can go. And then as we are speaking, you kept on mentioning something about going to church on Saturday. I'm like, oh.
Another one.
I'm like, of course, there had to be a twist. There had to be, it can never be a simple thing with Usim. Is it like with the hip hop, normal people listen to the Eminems and like mainstream and 50 Cents. He must come with like underground, deep hip hop. And now, uteta about being a Christian. And I'm like, oh, okay, so Sunday church, when are we going? No, Saturday. I'm like, there has to be a twist later. So I know, I'm like, okay, why? Why? And then, that's where it starts. You start like telling me about all of these things. In fact, you're still relatively new.
Yes.
So you didn't yet master I'd say the wisdom of being able to ease into because from the word go beast statue, Daniel 2, Daniel 7, beast, Revelation 13.
By the way, I could do a study in 15 minutes on Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Revelation 13, and the second coming of Christ. Boom.
And I'm like, So now, it's scary stuff, but at the same time. But again, Kulendo, what you said before, when we were mentioning Utembi, even in our shortcomings, when our hearts are in the right, God knows us. Yes. So He's able to kind of like, to cover with His wisdom and meet our shortcomings. So such that even though some people may look at that and thinking, you are doing a blunder, you are lacking tactic. It was what I needed in the sense that it caught my attention and I was like, Indoba, man, this is strange. I've never heard as it was similar to you. These things, beast things. First of all, I remember there was a book at home. I don't know if it was Revelation of Things to Come. The name of the book.
I think it's Willand.
I don't know who wrote it. I just know there were Revelation of Things to Come, and in that particular edition of it, I don't know if that's the case in all the books, but in this particular edition, it even had pictures of like, these beasts and things. I remember when I was very young, I came across this book and I would see like these
horror movies.
Like these statues. So now when you said this thing and then things started connecting and then I started being interested and then you told me, by the way, there are these Bible studies, youth, young people that...
And here's the interesting part in that. On the first day, I decided to come to church in East London after I had made that decision. On the first day, I remember Utandoraz, Nosia Ujogo. Usia was the youth leader in East London Central. And Utandoraz was the assistant youth leader. And they had made a decision to start youth Bible studies.
All right.
And that decision was announced on the first day
that you had come to church.
And for me, it's not coincidence. I believe it was God's providence. Because it was like, this guy is here. I need to give him something that is going to hold him and interest him. So these are the same Bible studies I invited you to.
So you invite me to those Bible studies. Now in my mind, I don't know if it was Musa Njogwen who was presenting. But the guy's ability to present.
He has a gift of teaching.
He has a gift of just capturing. So in my mind, there was kind of like this ascension of sort of like, first of all, Usim gives me these things that are like, deep and new information. Then I come across Nomusa,
Yeah.
who I think had been way longer in the church
Yes.
at the time, so
Yeah.
he probably was more tactful, as it were.
Yeah.
And as he's presenting, I'm
Yeah.
thinking, Doba, hey, I was captured
Yeah.
by the depth and the way in which the Bible suddenly was connecting in a
Yeah.
way that it never had connected before.
Yeah.
In the circles that
Yeah.
I had been in my journey in Christianity, for example, you'd find there being this almost, one would say, false dichotomy
Yeah.
between the Old and the New Testament,
Yeah.
for example, whereby they are pitted against each other. You know,
Yes.
but there's the Old Testament that, where God,
Law.
and God, like
Angry God.
angry God, and
Destructive.
then there's the New Testament where God is like calmed down and the grace and all of that. But then in this context of now me attending with these guys, like these Saturday going people that I was thinking at the time,
Yeah.
there's all of a sudden one thread
Yeah.
that runs through the entire Bible from Genesis all the way to Revelation. And the book or these two testaments
Yeah.
effectively become one,
Yeah.
right? So all of that, it captured me almost like immediately.
Instantly.
I think I started going to those Bible studies for quite some
Yeah.
time and absorbing as much as I could, and then I remember you then introduced me to the E.G. White software.
Yeah.
I had a laptop at the time, and then
Yeah.
I installed that,
Yeah.
started reading. I think Steps to Christ
Steps
was the
to
first
Christ,
book that I read, and as I was reading
Yeah,
there,
he hated Ellen White, by the way.
I
I hated Ellen White.
Oh.
With my lack of tact, the first thing I brought about Ellen White is what she said about vegetarianism.
yes.
Yeah, and he didn't like
No,
that.
no. It wasn't so much that.
Okay.
That wasn't so much the thing that caused me to be like,
Yeah.
it was, so the vegetarian thing, right, was a thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't have an issue with Ellen White. I just thought this vegetarian thing is weird.
He's weird, yeah.
In
that's
fact,
true.
I remember once
Yeah.
saying to you, and I could see, I don't know if I'd say you were hurt, but you were
Yeah.
kind of like, hurt
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
lack of a better
yeah,
word.
yeah.
I remember once
No,
saying,
it's true.
I saw the nyama.
Yeah.
I will never stop eating it. And then you say to me, never say never. But anyways, so then the Ellen White thing, right?
Yeah.
But the thing with Ellen White was when, actually you may be right a bit.
Yeah.
I think I may be confusing
Yeah.
things. The first thing that I was skeptical about is that you would reference Ellen White.
Yeah.
And I remember asking,
Who is this Ellen White? Yeah.
who is this
Yeah,
Ellen
yeah,
White? And then you say, oh, she's our prophet.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and remember,
Yeah.
to me, in my mind, when I think prophets,
Prophets.
I would think for simplicity's sake, I'm thinking these fake prophets,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah.
I'm
No,
thinking
no. Which is fair.
the equivalents of your modern day Kubana Major One, Bushiri,
Yeah, yeah.
like all these
Fire
guys who are
in the
doing
choir.
fire. And so in my mind,
Yeah.
when you're saying prophet, that's what jumps
Yeah.
to my mind.
Yeah.
So when you say she's our prophet, I'm like, okay, cult. That's what I'm thinking. These guys are a cult. But then as the more we spoke,
Yeah.
and then you gave me that software.
Yeah.
I think you, in
I
fact,
didn't even give you.
you were
No,
like,
no.
just install or something.
Yeah. Kaloku Umusa. This now Musa had become our friend, by the way, the one who would sometimes lead out in these Bible studies.
Yes.
So he gave me, said, no, you can have this on your computer. So I called Zooks. I'm like, yeah, you are the computer guy here. Please install this thing into my computer.
Yes.
So Zooks is like, no, man. Let me install this also in my computer.
Yes.
And maybe I can learn more about this Ellen White.
Yes.
And I just read Steps to Christ. And when I finished Steps to Christ, I remember I finished Steps to Christ, I was in the bus going to my graduation at MTAD. And I said, Zooks, I know you've just installed that Ellen White software. Please look for a book called Steps to Christ and read it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So after I installed it for a bit of time, I wasn't really reading it. Then you suggested
Yeah.
Steps to Christ. I read Steps to Christ. I remember there's a chapter there, which the title of it is something like "What to Do
With Doubt.
The first two paragraphs, I
Yeah.
think, there's this profound thing. To me, it sounded like this is only something that a person who has a connection with God would say. That's
Yeah.
just how it hit me.
Yeah.
It says something like, because I was struggling, I found myself, for some reason, like for these few days, I was having these questions like, is there really a God? Is this thing even real and all of that? Then I read that. And then it says something like, it says, God does not remove, I'm paraphrasing, say something to the effect that God does not remove every opportunity for doubt, but he will give sufficient evidence upon which you can base your faith. Hey man, when I read that thing, I was like, that's it. That's it. So it's not like, because at the end of the day, the reality is, I mean, I'm a pragmatic person, and I'm like, realistically speaking, if you don't want to believe in anything, you will not believe in it.
You'll find a reason not to.
If I want to believe that there's no such thing called AIDS, I will believe that there is no such thing called AIDS. That's just how we are as human beings. For example, you find people saying there's no moon landing or whatever. Anyway, I'm not getting into that debate, but you understand that no, the earth is not flat, it's flat. People will believe what they want to believe. So I'm like,
and they will have arguments.
They will have arguments that make sense to that. So I'm like, so I can't really approach this thing with a mindset that says, I will only believe when all possible doubts are removed. So I was like, okay, let me focus on the evidence that is presented and see if the evidence is enough for me to give this thing a try. And that settled it. From that day, I was like, this person, God sent. And that was a wrap.
This is the funny thing. Now I come back from Tata. I was like, hey, Zooks. Oh, yeah, we talk with Zooks. Zooks is like, man, please pass by my house when you're going to church. You know, I want to go to church with you. He had been coming to the Bible studies, but not to church. And I remember when I saw you, you're like, guess what? I said, what is it? It's like, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist.
I said,
Now you can't imagine how funny that was, because here's Zooks, you know, with his cornrows, and he starts. He starts. He's like, I'm Seventh-day Adventist. But it was exciting. It was exciting. And I had just recently been baptized, and I think you were the second person by the grace of, no, you were the first one by the grace of God that the Lord used me to, to win to Christ. And I was like, man, I praise God, because I was able to, because for me it was, I always struggled. I was like, Lord, as I was praying for you, I was like, Lord, I let this guy into this hip hop thing, and now I've left it. And now, please, if Satan could use me, if it was Satan was using me at that time to bring this guy into hip hop, can you use me to also bring, Zooks to Christ? And by the way, among other reasons, one of the reasons that were important for me when I stopped, listening to hip hop, and God providentially led me to that decision. I don't have the time to go into the details of that. But one of the things that came to my mind, of course, there was the issue of hip hop has a certain reputation. And I don't want to be working around the reputation, explaining why I can be Christian and do hip hop at the same time. I would rather take that and put it away so that people don't have to question and I have to answer questions about things.
Defending, having to spend a significant amount of time instead of speaking about
Christ,
defending
why I'm doing hip hop. And I was like, it defeats the whole purpose of me saying I'm going to stay in hip hop and trying to use hip hop to win people to Christ if I have to explain why I can be in hip hop and be a Christian at the same time, because a lot of people will not associate hip hop with Christianity. That was one of the reasons. But a major thing to me was like, I needed hip hop to help me deal with certain things and fill a certain void in my life. And whether it was right or wrong, it served its purpose. And now that I had found Christ, I did not need that. And now I had no reason to actually find refuge in hip hop because I could find refuge in Christ. I did not need to, I did not need to use hip hop as a solace and all of these things that it had been to me, because now Christ was that and more. And Christ did not provide solace, but at the same time also corrupt me, because the same thing that helped me with certain areas in my life I probably would not have started smoking marijuana if I had not listened to hip hop. But most of the hip hop I was listening to, even the underground hip hop, weed was glorified. I remember, there was a song that I liked by Dead Prez called "Be Healthy."
Yeah.
And it's a nice song. I don't eat no meat, no dairy, no sweets, only ripe vegetables, fresh food, and whole wheat. And from it goes on and speaks about what we would call the health message in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. But among the lines, it says no cigarettes, only ganja,
Yes.
fresh juice squeezed from oranges. So that's the only line that I would say is objectionable. But that was enough to say, these guys are speaking about health and they're actually promoting this thing. So with the friends that I was hanging around, then I started, experimenting with smoking, and that's where I started. Even though it was not long stretched, I had enough sense to say, this thing is not really helping me to be a better person, so I put it aside. But I was saying that this thing that had a positive influence in my life
It
also had
has
a lot of
these
negative
problematic,
influences.
yes, yeah.
And it also introduced thoughts in my mind that made me question God, His existence, His fairness, His love, and all of those things. Like the same Dead Prez in a song, I think it's Propaganda, where Stickman says, he talks about when his mom talking to him, he says, I listen closely to what she's saying. When she speaks of Jesus, I ignore it. But when it's practical, I'm all for it, No, that's not in Propaganda, it's in Psychology. In Propaganda, he says, my first words would be, I believe man made God out of ignorance and fear.
Because if God made man,
If God made man, why
didn't
put us here? He's supposed to be the all-loving, the same God who let Hitler put the Jews in the oven,
So they linger.
Planted certain thoughts in my mind,
Yes.
So it's like, the same thing that had positive influences in me was also maybe one of the reasons why I had a point in my life, as you said, I was into Egyptian mythology, I was into Greek mythology, I was into, Rastafarianism and all of this hodgepodge of things, whatever I could do that would make me feel spiritual, but that was away from the God of the Bible.
Yes.
And Jesus Christ and His salvation. Yeah. So when you told me that on that Sabbath, it was really powerful. Yeah. It was really powerful.
So yeah. From there, I think I start going to church now. Stay with my cornrows and knobs, and so I attend church. And now I guess we're sort of like, we're going to start getting into a bit of the controversial sides of Adventism to an extent, unfortunately. Yeah. So I attend church, and remember, for some time I'd spent with this Bible study group, right? I had this conception that these people, for example, this Ellen White, which now I'd also accepted as a messenger that God has given to this movement. Because as the Bible says, God does nothing except He first reveals it to His servants, the prophets. So whenever God has a move that He wants to do, He will send a prophet as part of letting His people know, as the initiation of the process. So I'd embraced her now as a God sent. And in these Bible study groups, that was the case with everyone who was here studying the Bible, and the issue of the health message was also a thing that was preached. So my conception of Seventh-day Adventists of this church is that this is how they all think. That was the idea that I had. I get it.
And by the way, within the first year of us being Seventh-day Adventists, both of us, we quickly became vegetarian. Actually, I started being a vegetarian for 6 months, and then I switched to being on a plant-based diet completely. People call it vegan. Sometimes I avoid vegan for reasons that but we're vegan to all intents and purposes. But Zooks went. I remember the last day he came to my place and he told my brothers, give me all the meat that you can give me. We used to eat these choc chip cookies. We went and bought two. It's like, I'm going to eat everything today. This is my last day. From tomorrow on, I'm vegan.
And I'm vegan. And that's how it happens. I went cold turkey. And to some extent, for some time, there were times that I would think, hey man, I should have at least bought KFC one last time. Because KFC tastes nice. It tastes nice. I still think it tastes nice. So I've left it. But anyways, I went cold turkey and I was vegan. And so, but I think by the time I started going to church, I was already vegan.
You're already vegan.
So now, as we are interacting So this, by now, this is probably maybe 2 months. So me starting to go to the Bible study was probably April, May, somewhere there. And then me starting to go to church is probably, let's say, June-ish, July or something like that. I don't remember the exact dates. This is 2007 though.
So it was around June, because I went vegan June.
Okay.
And you followed soon after that.
Okay, so it must have been somewhere around June.
Around June.
So now, as I get into church, and you know, in our church, there are lesson studies and there are afternoon programs where people get to engage. And so you get to have an idea of the general thinking of people. So as these things would happen, I quickly caught on that, wait a minute. It seems like these people have an issue, first of all, with this health message. This thing of not eating meat, it seems like these people have a problem with it. I was like, okay, that's weird. Number one. Number two, it seems like they have a problem with this Ellen White. Because there's this phrase that keeps on coming off, no, she's the lesser light, give us the bigger. I'm like, Gandhi, what's happening here? Like, I thought, I was, it confused me.
Yeah, it's confusing.
But then, fortunately, because of the fact that I had, those Bible studies had cooked me enough for me, and I mean, it's not that I was like completely immature. I was still young, because 2007 I was like 20, going for 21. So I was still young, but I had enough maturity to be able to sort of like understand the idea that people can be here, but they may not necessarily agree with everything. So it shocked me, but I had in, like, you know, the youth group I was with, whereby, you know, we speak about these things, like, no, hey man, that's how it is. Some people, you know, they will not, some people, they will not believe in the things that the church believes in, effectively, because the health message is a message of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Yeah, and before we close this segment, I just wanted to also mention this, that it's important in the context for people to understand that, you know, both Zux and I, you know, we're extroverted people. And there never was a time when we were spectators in the church. Yeah, we got in, we joined the team, we started
commenting.
Commenting and all of that. You know, and of course, with all these things being new to us, we were commenting from that perspective, you know, without the maturity of knowing. You know, it was zeal. It was not, I wouldn't say not according to knowledge, but it was zeal without experience. And that happens a lot with young people. And I think this is where some of the challenges that we started facing came in. Because we learned a lot of information, but sometimes we didn't have all the tact to know how to bring it to people in a way that was more, you know, winsome. But I would, even as now in my more, you know, older years and more mature years, I would still say that we were reasonable for the stage where we were in our faith, and also in the years that we had, because we were young people, so we didn't have that nuanced look at life. You know, with young people, things are black and white. Grays, we don't deal with it. It needs to be very clear what it is. And so we're operating from that standpoint. And this is where some of the challenges that we faced came.